As the war in Ukraine grinds on and global power dynamics quietly shift, a new debate is stirring at the heart of Europe. Should the European Union break its long silence with Moscow, or risk watching its influence fade from the negotiating table altogether? The European Union is facing growing internal pressure to re-establish direct communication with Russia, following comments from French Foreign Minister Noel Barrot calling for a more assertive and independent European diplomatic posture. After nearly 4 years of near-total diplomatic disengagement from Moscow, Barrot argued that Europe can no longer afford to stand on the sidelines while others shape the future of the Ukraine conflict. Speaking in a recent interview with Libération, the French foreign minister emphasized that the EU, now Ukraine's largest financial and military supporter, must have a direct channel to defend its strategic interests, rather than outsourcing responsibility to external powers. Europe must be able to assert its own interests, Barrot said, without delegating that responsibility to anyone else. Barrot's remarks come amid rising concern within EU capitals that Europe's role in shaping the outcome of the Ukraine conflict has diminished, particularly as US President Donald Trump has pursued direct engagement with both Moscow and Kiev in an effort to broker a settlement. While Washington has taken the lead in high-level negotiations, many European leaders fear that decisions affecting the continent's security could be made without Europe fully represented. French President Emmanuel Macron and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni have both floated the idea of appointing a dedicated EU envoy to Russia, arguing that Europe needs a seat at the table if lasting solutions are to be found. Barrot made it clear that France has never completely ruled out dialogue with Moscow, provided such engagement is transparent, coordinated with Ukraine and EU partners, and delivers tangible benefits. In December, President Macron publicly urged European leaders to reconsider their refusal to engage with Russian President Vladimir Putin. His warning was blunt. If Europe stays absent, negotiations may move forward without it. The Kremlin's response was cautiously receptive. Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov stated that President Putin remains open to dialogue with Macron, so long as there is genuine political will on both sides. However, he stressed that any conversation must have a clear purpose and should not be used as a platform for political lecturing. The last direct phone call between Macron and Putin took place in July, marking their first conversation since the early months of the conflict in 2022. Despite France's push, unity within the EU remains elusive. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas has firmly rejected the idea of reopening direct talks with Moscow. She has argued that the bloc has little to offer Russia diplomatically and should instead focus on applying sustained pressure. According to Kallas, the concessions already made by the United States toward Ukraine leave Europe with limited leverage, making renewed dialogue ineffective. This stark contrast in views highlights a deeper rift within the EU, between those who see engagement as a strategic necessity and those who believe pressure, not conversation, remains the only viable path. For its part, Moscow has repeatedly stated that it is open to negotiations, but only under specific conditions. Russian officials have insisted that any talks must acknowledge Russia's security concerns and abandon what they describe as Western efforts to inflict a strategic defeat through Ukraine. Whether these positions can be reconciled with European demands remains uncertain, but the calls from Paris suggest that some EU leaders believe dialogue is no longer optional. As global diplomacy accelerates and alliances evolve, the European Union faces a critical choice: remain on the periphery of high-stakes negotiations, or reassert itself as a central diplomatic actor with its own voice and strategy. The coming months may determine whether Europe regains influence or continues to watch history unfold from the sidelines. If you value clear, in-depth geopolitical reporting without the noise, Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you the stories shaping the world every single day.